Welcome. My name is Nick Elliott, and this is the Focus Life Podcast. I'm the owner and operator of Focus Training here in Jupiter, Florida, and for the last 12 years, I've been inside of the fitness industry and the healthcare industry as a personal trainer, a movement practitioner, and a movement engineer. Now, what I've come to realize is that there are more variables that we need to take into account in regard to our overall existence and how we seek to optimize that, from a day-to-day basis to a weekly outlook to end-of-the-year goals and certain aspirations that we carry with us, whether it's a pursuit for something greater, whether it's more spiritual, mental, emotional. Maybe we want to be able to move more efficiently. Maybe we just want to be able to get through a day with a smile on our face. Whatever the case is, we look to create certain shifts. We look to bridge certain voids or gaps. And episode by episode, as you follow along, I do my best to really connect the dots and provide you actionable steps and resources that you can utilize on a daily basis. Please, and join me on this journey. Let's get this together. The Focused Life. The Focus Life Podcast, Episode 5, will be an interview with Matt LaBosco here in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, Jupiter, Florida. And we are going to discuss the vitality health paradigm, the medical model, how to expose and create awareness around emotional patterns, and then starting to transition some of the focal points in life from, okay, if this is where I currently am, this is where I want to go, but I keep ending up over here, why is that happening? We do our best to discuss actionable steps and place into your awareness or your lens some things or variables to take into account through daily life. Here we go with the Episode 5, the Focus Life Podcast. All right, so we are back live. This is episode 5 of the Focus Life Podcast. I am Nick Elliott, your host, and today I'm honored to have him on. Matt LaBosco is here with us. This is my first interview episode, so I'm super stoked about that. I will say that I'm a little bit nervous, but overall just generally excited. And getting into this now, Matt LaBosco has been a part of my life now for several years. What I think is about 5 years now, if I'm not mistaken, around 2019. Yeah, about 5 years now. And when I say part of my life, I mean from soft tissue work and working through some of the biomechanics of the body, from the mental, emotional state of things, from the diet and nutrition side of things, from looking at your sleep and dialing that in. I tell you what, he's spearheaded just trying to bridge all of the voids, all of the gaps in life, and it has been an incredible influence on me. So it's always a pleasure when we do get to talk. I always appreciate the time. I'm very grateful for it. So having said that, Matt, if you want to just kind of take it and give an introduction and let us know who you are, man.
Yeah, man. No, thanks so much for being here, Nick. I'm honored to be the first of many guests you're going to have on this great podcast you're putting together. So thanks for having me. So basically the simple way I like to explain myself is I'm a holistic vitality practitioner. And so what does that mean? Basically it's been a vision of mine since I've been, as far as back as I can remember, high school, to really kind of figure out the most optimal way to go about life, and not only just from the standpoint of physically, which is where my journey started, orthopedic surgeries, but also understanding nutrition, psychology, spirituality. And what I found out very early is that the health model didn't really seem to be able to meet the needs of optimization. It really did meet the needs of allowing me to survive. And so I started to go down this pathway of distinguish between health and vitality, wrote a book, and I know Nick and I are going to talk about it. But currently I basically teach people how to optimize their life through these vitality principles, which we'll probably talk about here on our podcast. through physical, systemic, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And I have a private practice in Palm Beach Gardens, and I teach classes on vitality, like Nick said, physically, nutrition, mental, emotional, I coach. And so do classes and work with people one-on-one right here in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. And also love working with professionals like Nick and geeking out with him. So really excited to get into this with you today, Nick.
Right on, right on. Thank you for sharing all that. Yeah, and I mean, just as you're speaking, out of curiosity, this just occurred to me as you're going. Your road from where you started to where you are. Do you find that there was this? You kind of walked into this. Okay, I want to address all of these things, and everything that you just listed. Do you feel you walked into that and immediately knew I want to address all these things, or do you feel that, let's say, through the last 20, 30 years, every so often you're kind of like, ooh, and now there's that piece. Let me evaluate that.
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, it definitely did not come all at once. Like my journey started, I was a three-sport athlete and was constantly injured, had 5 orthopedic surgeries offered to me before the age of 23. I turned down two of them. Two of them are major reconstructions of my elbow and my ankle. And the thing that irked me was that I was literally following every health, fitness, recommendation, physical therapy. I did everything I was told. I ate exactly what was healthy, quote unquote. I worked out exactly how I was told to. I rehabilitated exactly how I was supposed to. I was a really good patient. I was in really good shape, quote unquote, and my body kept breaking down. And so that was kind of like the first thing. It's like, wait a minute, why am I not getting better? And I started to question everything.
Yeah.
And then, I started to get some answers, meeting some incredible mentors. I was not smart enough to figure this out myself. I'm smart enough to hang around with smarter people than me. And kind of went down the path, started to get a handle on the biomechanical thing. And then I'm like, oh man, this nutrition thing's important, right? It's like, and again, my wife and I, we ate super healthy. My wife's an amazing cook, and we have home cooked meals, and we ate salads, and we had the salmon, and we didn't eat any of the bad naughty sugar and dairy and all that stuff. And we got, we weren't doing well with this healthy lifestyle, and so we started to question that. And so started to ask questions like, why is salad healthy for us again? And why are we told at the time we started it, why is saturated fat bad for us? Because we were told that's like literally you might as well just drink poison. And now it's sugar that's bad, but we won't go down that rabbit hole. But we started to ask the questions like, why is all this bad? And what we found out was there was really no basis for any of the stuff they were saying, besides other people's agendas, which again, another rabbit hole, maybe for another podcast, Nick.
Right.
And then, kind of got a handle on that. Saw huge changes with our own health and my wife's health, and started to share it with clients. And that kind of emerged into, all right, I feel like we got the physical thing down, systemic thing down, like the nutrition is like, okay, but boy, this whole stress thing's really throwing a kink in everybody's, journey of fitness and health. And not to mention my own. I was stressed out of my mind when I owned my clinic in LA. And so it's like, what's stress? Like, I don't even understand what this is. So that was just another rabbit hole that I went down, and really started to go into the personal development field. And lo and behold, I found the same thing. A lot of the stuff that was accepted as the healthy route, again, the was more to keep you dependent on the health system, not to empower you to actually access vitality. And again, I know we're going to talk about this a little bit. And so, journey, Nick, and then walked into the more mental, emotional, and trying to understand psychology, spirituality, and that's really kind of how I became this holistic vitality practitioner, because I wanted to make sure that I was able to provide somebody what they needed, not just what I had. Right. Because if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. If I sold orthotics, whether you had financial problems, back pain, or relationship problems, orthotics will be the thing I'll sell you, because I don't know what else to sell you. Right. It's like the fix all for everything. So I didn't want to be that practitioner. I wanted to have tools in my toolbox enough to be able to meet someone where they are and give them what they needed. And if I didn't have it, know where to send them.
Right. So, I mean, that's it. First off, that's incredible. And look, the more I've gotten to know you, this global approach to our existence has really helped me fine tune how I move through a day. I mean, really like a day at a time, how I'm moving through. But when you start to think about it, you can't just move through it a day at a time. You need to have a vision of where you want to go. And we'll touch on that in a little bit. But one thing was occurring to me as you were speaking to that, really two things. The first thing was, in my own experience as a personal trainer now for going on 12 years, and within the last 2 years, I'd say that even my title, I've started to kind of transition my title because I really don't feel like a personal trainer anymore. I start to dabble in a lot more areas. And once you kind of have like the biomechanic background and you can work the soft tissue hygiene and things, it's like, am I still a personal trainer? But anyway, what I started to realize was when people would come to me with, I like the orthotics, the statement there, because I've seen a lot of them. I've seen a lot of people coming in wearing, I'm not going to name brands of all the shoes, but wearing high heeled shoes or just really thick soles. They're lifted. That's fine. They have the orthotics in, but there's issues stemming up the chain. And whether it's a medial knee or it's the outside, the lateral hip, or whatever the case is, things are showing up. And I always just start with, when I do my assessment, okay, why don't we take a look at this piece first? Let's take off your shoes. Let's see how your foot is functioning first off, right? Let's work through the foot ankle complex, and then we'll work up the chain. Several times, though, it has now happened to where I was asked for my insight via text message, and because that person had a possible surgery coming up, or that person had a possible, let's say, diagnosis coming up, and they wanted my feedback based off of my experience with them to share with the other healthcare professional. That both times that happened specifically was met with, that's not possible. One person said that's not likely. And so I was kind of like, I questioned myself. I questioned myself. I said, is it not likely? Like, how is it not likely? And where I'm going to with this, Matt, is how have you dealt with the fact that you're in a position to look at the whole, right? Whereas they are in a position to look at that isolated part. How do you help people bridge the gap to, it could be more than just this thing? Let's look elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it starts with two things I think are important. One, not discounting what another professional says. Like, I think that's really important, because there's truth to what they're saying. Right. There's truth to it, but it's within a certain context, right? And so everything's context dependent. It's like, well, that's not likely based on what I've seen in my world. Right. That makes sense. I believe it, right? And so they're not trying to be, evil, but by saying that, right. It's like, yeah, that makes sense, right? That's cool, and I understand what they're saying. And so, number one, I think it's important to come into these conversations with people without vilifying whoever it is saying whatever they're saying. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, and it's easy for us, and I think trainers and health professionals like ourselves, Nick. I'm going to just call it out here because I know I can fall into this, because we're not licensed professionals recognized by some greater, authority. We're not, right. You're not a chiropractor, not a doctor. I think a lot of us suffer from maybe a little bit of an inferiority complex. So we have a little bit of a tendency to be like, that guy's an idiot. They don't know what they're talking about. They're all morons. Right. And it's like, we need to slow our roll there. Like, they're not idiots. There's just a certain paradigm that they're looking through, and that's okay. It's a paradigm, right? And so that's number one. Number two is, to me, it's about educating clients. It's about really sharing with them, like, hey, that's one perspective, that's a paradigm, and I totally get it, and this is where that makes sense. Here's another way to look at it, and educating them about, let me show you, like, you take them through literal demonstrations to show them, hey, look what happens if I freeze your foot, or I lock up your hip. Like, look what the influence it has on your knee. Do you feel that? Okay, but if I twist you this way and bend your knee, does your knee hurt? It's like, oh, that's interesting. Well, was the meniscus torn here, but not when you were over here? Like, so
Right.
is the meniscus causing the pain, or is it the fact that your hip couldn't help your knee? Like, so which one is it, man?
Right.
This isn't as, it's not as simple as that's causing the problem. So, and that's not to say that like there's a place for everything. There's a place for surgery. There's a place for everything. And so it's, to me, it's about educating them
Right.
and doing it in a way that's empowering to them, and not in a way that's trying to make you look like you know what you're talking about and the other
Right.
person does.
Right. Matt, I really want to ask what if you could give like a brief example of what that looks like, because my first question while you're talking was, do you feel that current, past client, whatever, do you feel that they retain the information to an extent that they're able to use it, that they are empowered, like whether it's why don't you try this foam rolling practice at home? Why don't you, instead of driving with your shoulder when you're trying to open up, maybe you look first with the nose, like do you feel that they take these things with them? Even, I guess, like we're speaking physical right now, but this could be stress, this could be diet, this could be when you say, hey, stop drinking alcohol, or I think alcohol could be influencing you this way. Do they take that with them?
Yeah, I mean, it also, so there's the educating somebody. So the first thing is just sharing a different perspective. Okay. And so it's like, hey, because maybe you didn't even realize, because a lot of
Right.
people like don't even realize that there's a cause, that these two things are even connected.
Right.
Right. So that's the first, what I mean by empower them with a different
Mm-hmm.
perspective. Like,
Yeah,
hey,
yeah, yeah.
do you even know these things are related? And
Right.
it's like, oh my God, is that why my back hurts on my left side too? I'm like, maybe if your hip is totally locked up, you're coming in with knee pain, and you occasionally have left low back pain. Well, I had no idea that the hip had anything to do with the knee and the back. It's like, that's right. That they have now a knowledge, they have a perspective. So
Right.
that's that first level of empowerment. Now, what they want to do with that and how they want that,
Right.
I've had people that, I'm not exaggerating, Nick, that come to me with low back problems, like can't walk, radiating pain down their leg, blah, 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 gotten to a point where they're skiing. This is a true story. Got her to the point where she was able to go skiing with her family, and crushed it, and came back and went and got back surgery. And I said, I was like, it really caught me off guard, because I'm
Right.
like, oh my God, did something happen when you were skiing? Did you have a major setback? She's like, no, it was amazing. I felt great. She's like, but I have a slip disc, so I have to get it fixed.
Oh, right. Okay.
And it's
Okay.
like, there's nothing, what are you going to do about it? Like,
Right.
she has been told and believed that because the thing said X, if you don't fix it, you'll have a problem. And if you believe that, then you believe that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I'm not going to change that. I mean, especially with the evidence that your pain had nothing to do with that herniation,
Right.
because you're skiing without pain, right? And so, what people do with this information, uh, what can I do, man? You can, like, as they say, you can lead the horse to water,
Right.
and
Right.
at least I can say, well, I did my job.
Right.
I wanted to offer them another perspective. Now, if they're like, wow, that really makes sense, and this is what I'm always waiting for, what would you recommend?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Now they're asking me my opinion,
Yeah. Okay.
right? Because I might offer them the knee, the hip, and la la la, and they're like, yeah, 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 but that meniscus is torn. I'm like, all right, well, you better go get it fixed.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I used to make it my business to try to convince them,
Right.
and they have to get it. And
Right.
and what I really realized in those moments was that was more about me. That was more about me proving to myself and to the world that I knew better than these other people.
Right. Right.
And I don't.
Yeah. I
I'm just have a thought. Here's a perspective. If you're asking me what I would do with you, and if I had a lady literally come to me about a month ago, and she was like, do you really think that I can play tennis again, even though I have this meniscus tear? She asked me that. And I go, based on what I've seen over the first couple of weeks, I 100% do believe this. But here's the catch. You can't, just because it feels better when you're walking doesn't mean you're ready to play tennis. Like, we have to go through a process to get your knee and body ready to tennis. And so I understand your season starts in like a month. And so if you just want to get back on the tennis court and whatever happens, and this doctor saying, well, get the surgery and we'll get you back on the tennis court. Well, what can I say? Go get the surgery. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. You're asking me about how do we really solve the cause, address the cause and the problem here? Right. And do I think you need the surgery? I don't. I don't think so. Could I be wrong? 100%. But so far, I've walked on this path with you. You couldn't walk when you came in with pain. We've done minor things. I'm seeing changes. You're now basically going to ADLs without pain. Like, that's a big deal. Now we just have to keep progressing you so that to get your knee strong enough and the chain strong enough so that you can take on the load of tennis. Right on. But hey, I'm here. You do you. What can I tell you?
Right. So I mean, I guess this is the perfect opportunity to try and explain or highlight bridging the gap, because again, my thought process while you're speaking to that is, okay, so I'll use that meniscus tear there. The person knows that there is a meniscus tear, but you've helped them at least establish walking around on a daily basis without pain, right? And maybe we're not ready for tennis. Okay, great. But you've gotten to a point where, okay, this person is able to do the necessary tasks each day without pain. But they know that mentally now it's this fixation of, but there's a meniscus tear. Mm-hmm. Do you try and then bridge the gap to redirecting the focus to maybe, I'm trying to think of where you could try and take that. Like, all right, instead of focusing on the fact that you have a meniscus tear and that you're not in pain anymore, why don't we focus on the actions you want to be able to do on a daily basis? If it is tennis, how can we, do you get what I'm saying there? Trying to bridge it from point A to point B, not necessarily staying in the physical, but starting to bring in other concepts. Because I guess what I'm speaking to there is you're trying to create an environment internally that is self-sustaining, that is going to heal itself, right? And maybe you've done enough to address the physical there to where they're not in pain. So now we have to start touching on the other pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it goes hand in hand. It is impossible to separate them, right?
Right.
You can't separate what's happening physically with what's happening mentally. It's not possible. And so I'm already impacting them mentally when they're limping into my office and now they're telling me they can go up and down stairs without knee pain.
Right.
Like, that's already mentally having an impact, right? Because she even said to me, she came in, this is like a week or two ago, she goes, Matt, guess what? I'm like, what? And when someone says that, I'm like, oh God, what are they about? Surgery.
Right.
She's like, I feel like I can get better. Right. And that was not based on anything I said to her, Nick.
Right.
Right. It was based on the fact that the results were speaking for themselves. Right. And so, but here's the part where it can go south. And so you do have to address this with people, is people believe that because they can walk around without pain,
they can go do everything.
That they're better, that they were injured and now they're better. Like this idea of
right.
Two things that don't exist. It's like, no, right now your knee can tolerate walking around, going up and down stairs. Like we've conditioned the chain enough to walk around, get in and out of your car, which are relatively complex movements. Yeah. Okay. But just because you can walk around and get in and out of your car doesn't mean you can get on like your knee can take on the unpredictable environment and rapid movements of tennis.
Right.
Like, we have to condition you for that. We got to get your knee ready for that. So there's a gap between being able to walk without pain and being able to play tennis without knee pain. Right. And so throughout the entire time I'm rehabilitating somebody, it's a constant education, constant reassuring, and constantly pointing them to the difference. Measure backwards. Like remember, you couldn't walk when you came in here.
Right.
Okay. I understand you can't play tennis yet, but we're 2 weeks into this thing. Right.
Right.
And I understand you want to play, but this is the other part. And I actually had this conversation with a young woman lately. She's like, I got to work out. I got to work out. I'm like, and this is where we start to transition. Like you say, Nick, okay,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like, this
Yeah.
isn't physical, man. This is something else going on here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why do you need to work out?
Right.
And it's just silence. I'm like, what happens if you don't work out?
Right.
And where it went to was, I don't like being alone.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
All
And
right.
it's like,
Yeah.
okay. So her workouts was a way for her to connect. It was a social thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
A way for her not to be alone. She didn't like being alone. Like she had been through some things and was uncomfortable. And it was like
Right.
I was so proud of her. I'm like, wow, that's such an awesome thing to own and discover, right?
Right.
Because I did ask her to reflect on it, and she's like, yeah, I just realized when you said that to me, like, I don't want to be alone.
Right.
I was like, okay, so here's somebody who's in excellent shape, a very good athlete, whose
Right.
body is literally screaming at her to slow down,
Right.
but she's using exercise as a way to self-regulate herself, right? It's a way to self-regulate because of whatever the things that are driving, that are unsettling, anxiety,
Right.
overwhelm, which are answered questions or problem I haven't solved for. That's all
Yeah.
that communication is saying. I don't want to deal with it, so I'm going to just keep distracting myself. And we all have different versions of doing that. Some of us in our world, Nick, is people exercise. They
Right.
exercise, they exercise, they exercise, they can't stop. And if you tell them they can't exercise, they almost have a mental breakdown.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yes. Yes.
well, there's a
Yeah.
bigger problem here to talk about.
Yes. For sure. And I mean, oh man, that it brings up a lot there because right as a personal trainer, like my life revolves around essentially being in training facilities and
Yeah.
being helping people execute that. And as I got into more of this work where I started bringing other pieces in, I realized what started showing up for me. And a lot of times I it's man, oh gosh, I could go into so much right now, but the basic concepts of what I had established in my mind as I would tell myself I'm tired, that meant I'm going to take a rest day. I would tell myself I had good energy, that meant I'm going to go work out. On the days that I established that I was tired and a rest day, I would have a complete inner turmoil of like, dude, are you sure? Are you sure you're tired? Are you sure you don't have enough energy to go do this? What's going to happen if you do? Could you tear a muscle? Like, and it would just go into this whole thing. And the more the years pass, I should say really the weeks, the months, and then kind of a year or two pass of this happening, and I finally got to a point of it's okay, like it's okay, everything's gonna be okay. Let's just kind of like sit with this for a little bit, and then I don't. Maybe it's just the environment. Like I was created by an environment that was heavily dictated around that. That could be largely due to like the fitness industry or maybe that even the medical model just being reliant on okay, that's where I go regulate my emotion, that's where I go meet people, that's where I go like build
Yeah,
myself up. And
totally.
it just got to a point of like okay, maybe I just need to sit with this for some time. So I totally hear that, and that's yeah. Oh my gosh, I totally hear that. That now my mind is racing right now. Like, oh my gosh, yeah. So okay, so I guess taking that one step further, then right, you're inside of this vitality paradigm, this health paradigm, where you're creating the shift now, right? And one thing that I always think about, like when I think about Matt LaBosco, I think about the Apache helicopter, and I think about whole part, whole approach, right? So if you're in this environment with this individual, whether it's the meniscus tear, whether it's someone coming in with the physical body like this, eventually the body, if you're not listening to the signs, the body's going to just give you a stop. It's just going to say, nope, we're taking a break. Boom, done. And whatever that looks like, whatever shows up there.
If you're
Say that one more time.
if you're lucky,
Explain, please.
if you're lucky, if the body finally doesn't stop tolerating abuse. You're lucky if you get to a point where it shuts you down so that you can actually reflect, because there's other times the body
Oh,
just fails. And so you'd rather the body just like be like, I've had enough, we're shutting you down.
Right.
It's the only way I can get you to listen. You'd
Right.
rather that than body failure.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's why I say, like, the body's on your side. I don't care what's happening, your
Right.
body's on your side.
Right.
And it's not doing the thing to make your day more challenging.
Right.
It's not. I'm sorry. I'm just helping a young girl with having wicked panic attacks to the point where she's like vomiting.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm literally teaching her, I'm like, do you understand your body's on your side when it's doing that?
Mm.
She's like, what are you talking about? I hate my body. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
and educating her. And I understand when you're going through it, it's a very extreme situation and
Yeah.
built a rapport enough with her to actually say that to her. I don't say that on the first time I'm talking to her, obviously. Um, but your body communicates to you
Yeah.
always. And it's up to you to take some time to tune in and hear, like, connect to what it's communicating. And it's also up to you to integrate the communication.
Yeah.
Right. And the more you dissociate from that, right, eventually the body's like, I'm either going to not tolerate this up to this point and shut you down, or the worst scenario is your body will keep tolerating the abuse until it can't tolerate anymore and it just fails.
Yeah. Right. So I mean, that in itself. So I get, if you're using the example of the, whether it's the panic attack now or the girl with the working out, the woman with the working out, what is your focal point then in addressing, right? Because obviously you don't want anyone to hit that point of failure, but if you see someone and you're as the practitioner, you're seeing the signs, you're seeing, oh man, this person really needs to listen, like they should probably take, they should really listen, but day by day, are you ever just like, dude, you need to stop, like you have to stop, or like, this is almost, to me, this is almost like, when you see a baby rabbit and like it's like the mom's not there and you're like, a coyote's probably going to get it or something, and you want to help it, but at the same time you're like, this is just life though, this is the circle of life. Do you just let it play out, or do you keep trying to emphasize, hey,
It's a
we
great
got to
question.
create?
If the little rabbit looked at me and said, help me, I don't
Mm,
want to get eaten by a coyote, I
right.
would move there in a half a second.
Right. Right. Okay.
Right. And so as a professional, as a practitioner, you know, if you came to me and you're giving me money,
Right.
okay, you're asking me to help you get to a destination.
Right.
Right. And so I have a responsibility and accountability to keep you aligned with that goal. That's why
Mm,
you're paying me.
okay. Okay.
Right. And so if you're paying me money, then it's my job to help you get where you want to go.
Right.
So if I see that you're telling me you want to go east, and I'm saying make a left, or make a right. Okay, we'll
Right.
keep it aligned with the actual
Right.
actual east. You say I want to go east, and I'm creating a plan that sends you in the direction to the right, and
Right.
I see you moving to the left.
Right.
This happened literally this morning. Okay, and I said to her, I said to her, I said, listen, you're asking me how to help you get to this destination over here.
Right.
Okay. I'm telling you this is the best way.
Right.
And it might be a right turn when you leave here. Now, you might leave here and make a left.
Right.
There's nothing I can do about that. But
Yeah.
my question is, why are you paying me?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make any sense. And so I believe I can help you. I believe I can get you there. But and it's okay to make lefts sometimes. We all do it.
Right.
But
Right.
you got to let me know
Yeah.
so I can help you get back on track. Right. And so I don't want people to feel like they have to be perfect by any stretch,
Mm,
but it does get to the point for sure, Nick, where it's like, listen, you're asking me to help you. This is the way I can help you.
right.
And I understand that if that's not the kind of help you want, that's fine.
Right.
But then I'm not your guy.
Yeah. And I think, man, that's a challenge. That's a challenge for anyone coming in to see you. That's a challenge for you to first off help someone establish where they want to go, because at least in my experience, most people don't really know where they want to go, and they actually haven't taken the time to think about it. I mean,
Well,
just
I'm not even saying it's that complicated. I'm like
right,
you
right,
came to
right,
me because you have knee pain and you want me to help you get out of knee pain.
right,
Like it's a
right.
very clear goal.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
follow me? Like
yeah,
that's why you're here. You gave me a lot of money to help you get out of knee pain.
yeah,
Well, here's the way to get there.
yeah, yeah.
Do you
Right.
know what I'm
Simple,
saying?
simple enough. Yeah,
That's
simple
simple.
enough. Yeah,
Simple. I hear what you're saying about where am I going in life. That's a
right.
whole other animal and handled a little differently.
Right. And really what I was getting at there was, I think in this day and age, I'm not huge. I don't really connect with social media in the way that like I like to spend a lot of time on it. I like to put up content that I feel can be applicable for people to use and pull. But what I realize is we're in this reality now where people almost are going to social media for educational purposes because you can get a 15-second clip on how to fix your knee pain. And it's like, dude, I found it. I found it. And you go and it tears your knee to shreds, like, so even that, I feel like helping someone establish, okay, you're in knee pain. Let's get you on a plan to get out of knee pain. There's so many influences in this day and age that people literally at their fingertips, to where they're like, but this says do this, or like, well, Matt did this with me yesterday, I'm gonna try this today, like. So I guess all I was getting at there was
This is why you have to charge people a lot of money to work with you.
right, exactly.
Do you know
Yeah,
why I say
yeah.
that?
Go explain, please.
If let's say I have the most exquisite advice
Right,
to get you out of back pain and it
right,
cost you $3.
right,
Okay.
yeah,
Right. You won't value it.
right,
You won't. It's
right,
just the way human nature is, right? I have given away more services, more classes in the last 10, 15 years. The people that, and it's not always, but there's exceptions to everything. But the people that come for free or don't pay a lot, they they're the ones that don't show up. They're the ones that don't do the homework. They're the ones that don't execute.
mm-hmm. Right,
The programs that I've charged the most for get the most incredible results. I have a master class that I'm doing. It's a pilot master class that I'm doing right now with Dr. Yoshi. He's a doctor friend of mine, and it wasn't cheap, right?
right,
Wasn't cheap. It was a couple of $1,000s. The results that people are getting in this 6 weeks is unreal,
yeah,
and their compliance and execution is absolutely off the charts.
right,
Unbelievable. I've never had a class be this compliant, this dedicated, and show up like them. Right now, and Nick, like I'm not the cheapest guy on the block right
right,
now, right?
right,
But there is something about a buy-in. You got to have skins in the game. If you're going to drop a couple G's with me to help with your knee pain, you're probably going to do what I ask you to do.
right,
If I give you a piece of paper flyer and say, hey, I could give you the same thing. Here's how you can get out of your knee pain, a free piece of paper. Where's that paper?
right,
I don't know where I put it.
right.
It's just not valued the same way,
Yeah,
right? Now, I think that's just what I've learned over doing this for a quarter of a century. That not charging for your services decently. I'm not trying about gouging people here, but you're doing them a disservice because they're
interesting.
not valuing it,
Right, right,
right? Like I've spent thousands of dollars on programs. Boy, do I show up to those.
right,
The program that I bought for $100 that has 80 modules to it and it's just full of information.
right, right,
I haven't even looked at one of them yet because it's
right,
only $80.
right.
But if I would have spent $3,000 on that same course, you bet your butt I'd be watching every part of it.
Okay.
So it's important to understand that that is a reality in the space, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So, and do you feel that that is enough to keep them accountable through that process? Like, I
They
guess
have to see results.
okay, I guess what I'm tying in there is you, you're paying for the service, um, and you made a decision to invest in that, right? They have you like you said they have to see the results. do you find that someone's current reality is sometimes more of a driver? And all I'm speaking to there is you have people, because I guess what I'm speaking to here is the people that are still willing to pay for something because they have the funds to pay for it, but they aren't actually in enough pain to create the change, right? Like, does that make sense? Where
Absolutely.
you have some people, and I'm
Mhm.
going to speak for myself here. When you started coming out with classes, I remember coming to you the first time and we talked about like a payment plan because I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get the money, but I know I need to be here. Like
Mhm.
that. And that's all that was running through my head was like, I want change so bad. I need like a kickstart, a reset, whatever, a redirect. Then
Yeah.
I'm going to make it happen. So it's like, do you find that there are people that come in, they have what will you say is the resources, but there isn't enough. I don't
They
want
have
to say this.
they have too many resources.
They have too many resources. Okay.
So yes, maybe for most people, spending $2,000 or $3,000 to work with me is like, wow, that's not cheap.
Right.
There are people out there that $2,000 or $3,000 is like me lending you $100,
Right. Right.
right? So it's all relative, of course,
Yeah.
right? For that individual, maybe they needed to pay me $30,000.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's all relative. I'm talking
For
about the
sure. For
general
sure.
public,
Yeah.
a couple $1,000s out of your pocket when you can go to a physical therapist and have your insurance pay for it. Like
Right.
that's a
Right.
decision that people are faced with, right? And so when they spend the $2,000 or $3,000 with me, that's something, right?
Yeah.
Now, there's no question that there are people, in the world and definitely here in, Palm Beach County that
Right.
it doesn't really, affect them to spend $3,000 or $4,000.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
the buy-in for them isn't the same.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. So I mean, even take that one step further. Even that then, talking about your paradigm shift, talking about health and vitality, I often find that you get people who are willing to pay for the services. I shouldn't say I often find. Every now and then you
They
come
have
to.
to value the service. That's the key.
Yes. Right. So
Yes.
okay. So let me ask you though, from the practitioner perspective, if someone is not adhering to the program, if someone is not, you're like you said, hey, we got to turn right here. We got to turn right. This is how we turn right. And they're like, no, I'm going to turn left. I'm going to turn left. And sometimes they tell you, sometimes they don't, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you ever get to a point of like, I got to let go. I got to let go here. I got to let go here. Like, if
Yeah.
but this person's like saying, no, I still want to come see you.
I got you. Yeah. No, I honestly don't, I can't remember the last time that's happened.
Right on. Right on.
And I think it's partly because of some of the things I've named.
Yeah.
But it's also, I think, because if I'm seeing somebody continually turning left, I want to try to understand why they're doing it.
Right.
So I'll start to have conversations with them about like this young lady,
Yeah.
right? It's like, what's going on? Like you keep working out and we keep
Right.
having setbacks here. Like, what's up? Like, what's going on?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so it's not just always like, you know, um, punitive, like, hey, shame on you, you shouldn't have
Right.
done that. So
Right.
it's like it's understanding, hey, what's going on? Talk to me. Like clearly I get that it's hard not to work out, but like I know you're doing this thing that is, you're connecting the dots, like you
Right.
did this and you have pain. Like, what is it why do you feel like you have to work out? So trying to pull that apart with them. And a lot of times I don't even think they understand why they're doing it.
Right. Right.
And so that's where I would go kind of vertical with them inside of getting them more connected to why they're doing what they're doing. And there's probably some underlying reason that has them, going in the direction that seems to be juxtaposed to their goal,
Right.
right? But if there's this other goal called, I don't want to feel alone,
Right.
that supersedes the goal called, I want to get my knee better.
Right.
And so, okay, if we're going to get your knee better, we have to actually address this other thing.
Right.
And so it's not always just because they want to not do the thing. Something's driving them to make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
And more often than not, they're willing to have a conversation about it. if they're not, and I open up that door, what can happen, Nick, and has happened, is they leave
Right.
and they never come
Okay.
back.
Yeah. 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 Makes
But
total sense.
I don't tell them, I don't kick them out. I don't tell them to go anywhere. But I open the door. I say, hey man, I think we really need to consider this over here. Like we should really talk about that.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Gone.
Right. So I
Right.
mean,
I'm not kicking them out.
right. So I guess from that, we'll hone in on that for a moment. What does it look like, or what is, I guess, for anyone listening, what is a way that right now, if they're listening and they're kind of like, man, I fall into that pattern, or whatever pattern the pattern is. How could you help someone create an awareness right now as to, this is where you are, this is where you say you want to go, this is where you're actually going? Is there something that you do or you say that helps someone kind of like gain clarity on that, break those
Yeah.
pieces down?
Yeah. I think it's called Socratic questioning.
Okay.
Okay. Ask a lot of questions. Like,
Right.
what's
Right.
some fascinating thing about Socrates
Yeah.
is he didn't teach anybody anything.
Right. He let them teach themselves.
He just asked them questions.
Right. Right.
And they were forced to think through things.
Yeah.
Right. And so obviously you can get good at asking questions.
Yeah.
Um, but that's usually what I'm doing with people. I'm like, okay, well, why did you do that?
Right.
Well, okay, well, you did it for that reason. Did you hit the mark? What did you learn? Would you do it
Mm.
again? You seem upset that you did that. Why are you upset? Like you're literally just asking questions because that's an opportunity for them to actually reflect on why they're doing what they're doing.
Right.
And that's exactly what happened to that young lady. Like I asked her all these questions and she sent me a message and I was like, dude, I went home and
Yeah.
I think I cried for like 3 hours and that was intense.
Right.
Yeah, but I had all these awarenesses and
Yeah.
it was so awesome. Like what an amazing, like those are the clients I freaking love. Like
Absolutely. Yeah.
they're willing to just like hear something, take a look, integrate it, right?
Yeah.
And she's the one who discovered the whole lonely thing, not me.
Right. Right.
And so, but all I did was ask questions,
Right.
right? And so I find that that is the best way to empower somebody is to lead them to the discovery, not tell them what it is.
Right.
Even if you know or you have a suspicion what's going on, if you can ask them questions almost as a way to see if you're even in the right ballpark, right?
Right.
Because sometimes I suspect something and I'll ask a question and they'll answer it and I'll be like, oh, yeah, no, that's definitely not it. They were pretty solid with that response, right?
Right. Right.
But then I'll ask a different question. I'm like, oh, okay, this is where there's uncertainty. Let's pull this apart.
Okay.
Let's see if we can help them discover it,
Okay.
right? And so I look at us, Nick, as a facilitator for discover their healing ability themselves. Like we
Right.
don't heal anybody.
Right.
We're trying to crack open the capacity for their innate capacity and ability to heal themselves, both
Okay.
mentally, emotionally, and physically. And so if we can facilitate that process by nudging them, I call it paternal libertarianism. It's
Right
like
on.
I try to keep my hands off, laissez-faire. Like I'm not going to get too involved here, but I'm going to tap and nudge and well, what about this and what about that and try to give them the opportunity to discover it themselves because we'd rather figure it out ourselves than have somebody dictate it to us.
Right on. Yeah. So as yeah, once again, Matt, thank you for sharing so much, because again, my mind's just going and I'm thinking, since I've met you, since I've started to do these things for myself, one of the things that I picked up inside of that was I would write. I started writing, and a lot of times I would start trying to ask myself questions, and then one step further, what I found in that was sometimes I realized that I would ask myself the questions that gave me access to the easiest answer, not necessarily the answer that was like the truth. Does that make sense? Like I was still trying to cover something up and asking myself those questions, you know?
Sure.
So
But the only way you would discover that is by going through that process.
yes, 100%. For
So
sure.
it doesn't mean like that was still perfect.
Right. Right. That's kind of like it's not a bad thing, right? Like
Not at
it's
all.
right,
Because you
yeah.
wouldn't have been able to say what you just said if you didn't do that first.
Right, right. Yes, this is true. This is true. Right on. All right. All right. So oh man, let's I just had a thought that I wanted to touch on. Hold on, give me a second here.
You're good, man. That's what editing's for.
Right, exactly. Um, oh, it's not coming to me. If it comes to me, great. But so I guess next step then in speaking to that, right, and asking questions, helping someone navigate it from. Oh, that was it. You used the word integrate. You use when you were speaking. You were like helping them integrate that back in. What does that mean, and what does that look like? Especially in this day and age, again, where we have access to easy education and it's so man the emotion part of it, Matt, the emotion part of it. I feel like I've heard hundreds now of professionals, practitioners, psychologists, whatever you want to, whatever framework they're inside of, talk about emotions a different way, from getting rid of it to breathing with it to regulating it to, and it's like, okay, hold on. Are you all talking about the same thing? Do you really believe like this is the way? But integrating it, I believe, is the one piece that it has to somehow come back. Like we can't just set it to the side and we're like, all right, we're good now. Let's go. Like I have experienced in my own life that at some point, like for example, I remember when I first started listening to Gabriel Mate, and he was basically going through like your anger's never going to go away. Like your anger is there for a reason, and it's not just going to all of a sudden be done because you figured out anger. It will always be there. And I just remember, like for me, where anger was, I think anger was as a result of many of the experiences I had growing up. But I just remember feeling so much relief in the knowing that, oh my God, the goal is not to get rid of it. The goal is not to, so like integrating it. So speak to me, speak to us.
Well, I mean, Gabor is just an angel on the planet, in my
Right,
opinion,
right.
and has so much great info on this. But I think a lot of this started with Carl Jung, who when he talked about the shadow self,
Mm-hmm.
and that we all have that darker side of us, and the desires, whether they're the sexual desires, whether they're the desire for power, and like all of these things that we would say are all the dark things, and that I believe that the wrong way to do. And again, I believe like there's people way smarter than me that I've learned from. Carl Jung, one of them, is to try to get rid of something you can't get rid of. That's a problem, number one.
Right,
Like it's
right,
part of our nature. Like our nature has these things embedded into them. And it's not about getting rid of them. It's not about shutting them out. It's not about looking at them as bad. When we do that, that's when they become a problem.
right,
Because, and I've been in communities where they've convinced themselves that I've dropped the anger. I'm no longer unworthy. I no longer feel these things.
oh,
And the
right, right,
only thing that does is it blinds you to when it's there, meaning when you're actually feeling those things, because they're very normal things and you're never gonna
right.
get rid of them. You've convinced yourself you're not feeling that.
Oh, right,
And
right.
so you're being driven by this personality, the spirit of anger, the spirit of jealousy, whatever it is. And because you're in denial, it's like, no, I'm not that way. It's still driving you. You're still acting it out, but you're completely disconnected to it. And so that's where you see people do these things and say they're doing it in the form of love or compassion, but that's not what's happening, and anybody from the outside can see it. So it's very dangerous to convince or create the goal of, hey, I'm going to try to get rid of this stuff. And Carl Jung was really one of the first people that, identified this as, you want to align those things, you want to integrate them. Like, there's a place for anger, there's a place for all of these things. You have to find their place and align them accordingly. Anger can be very useful, right? When aligned with something greater, when aligned with when it's serving something greater, right? There's a place for it, right? You're not going to get rid of it. You want to integrate that into your personalities, right? Because they're all different consciousnesses, they're all different intelligences, and they're all universal, meaning they live outside of every human. Like, anger is going to exist way before Matt and Nick are here. And the way you experience anger and the intelligence anger has with you is the same that it has with me, right? It's beyond us, right? It's the spirit of anger. And so we're going to be the ones that don't engage with that anymore, and we're going to shut it off, and like, that's silly, right? And a lot of it also, anger as an example, it usually signifies injustice. Like, it's a signal, it's a communication, like, hey, something's seriously wrong here, right? When people say that they're angry about something, and you ask them what they're angry about, they're usually say that this thing is happening that isn't fair. I keep getting blamed for this thing, or, hey, I'm expected to keep doing this thing for this person and they don't do anything for themselves. It really makes me angry. Or I see this abuse happening in the world, right? Like, hopefully we're angry when we see that. And we can use that anger, if we are aligned, to make corrections in the world. Like, right? Like, Gandhi, right? When you think of Gandhi, what emotion do you think of?
Straight off rip, I think of like peace.
Exactly. He is the embodiment of peace. Well, do you know what his son wrote a book, and the title of the book was about his dad?
I'm gonna guess that it's the opposite.
Yeah, The Gift of Anger.
Right.
And how Gandhi used anger to make all these changes in India. He aligned it in the proper way. Right. And so here's this guy who's embodied peace, and behind the scenes, his son's like, yeah, he used anger to make all that happen.
Man, oh man. Yeah.
Right. He didn't create this illusion. I am not angry. I don't get angry. Yeah. That's when someone says that, they're probably have more rage inside of them that you could ever imagine.
So that's what I'm going to two places. Like, well, so one was when I was going through my, let's say, unfolding is what I've been calling it in my podcast episodes, where I didn't know it at the beginning, right? And now you hear it everywhere: authenticity, your authentic self, and the open heart, so on and so forth. I realized, like, that's kind of what I'm becoming more in touch with. But at the time, I didn't recognize that, and I felt that through my own research, going through anger, blah blah blah. Just stop being angry. Just put it to the side. Stop being angry. You're good. And I really so it's interesting, right? Like, if you think about sustainability, you think about vitality paradigm, like the ability to really show up in this abundant way. And I realized, like a week, 2 weeks would go by where I was like almost on a high, like, oh man, I'm not angry anymore. This is awesome. And then fucking rage. It would be like an absolute storm where I'm punching holes in the drywall, I'm throwing shit around. Like, and sometimes, right, you were speaking to an injustice. Sometimes because I like stubbed my toe. Sometimes it was like because my tire was flat on my car and I had to go to work, like, and
displaced.
Right, displaced. There you go. Thank you for clarifying that. I'm glad you just said that. But so I was going to ask, do you find in your line of work that the blinding or the blinders or the lack of awareness or recognition towards some of these emotions or spirits, do you find that it does build up, or do you find that maybe, because I'm even thinking of it like, then if you're not paying attention to these things here, and they're essential for guiding you, and they need to be integrated at some point, don't you then create essentially like a fake identity, like a non-authentic self, like
fantastical reality.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, you're living in non-reality.
Right.
You've dissociated yourself. You disconnected from a part of you. So you've lost connection to yourself, right? And this is really like one of the differences between the health paradigm and the medical paradigm and the vitality paradigm. This is so important. Right. I shared this in the webinar last week.
Right.
Like this when it comes to emotion. The primary presupposition that the health and medical model has when it comes to these, we'll call them negative emotions like anxiety or anger, is the presupposition is they're the dysfunction.
Right. Okay.
Right. And then, so the next question that's asked in the health and medical model is, how do we eliminate or mitigate the dysfunction?
Right.
It's assumed it's the dysfunction, right? The vitality paradigm presupposition is the anxiety and anger is the proper function based on the current conditions.
Right.
And so then the primary question asked in the vitality mindset is, why is this happening? What is causing the system to create these reactions? What is the anxiety and anger communicating?
Right.
Let's assume that it's the proper function. You're supposed to feel anxious when you're in a dangerous environment.
Right.
You're supposed to feel anxious when there are things around you that don't serve you, that don't align, that are unjust and that blame you for everything and that tell you you're the problem. Why would you feel anxiety? Well, you should feel anxiety. That's a horrible place to be. And so what do we do with people that are in those environments? We give them medication or some kind of magical supplement to suppress their anxiety, because the idea in the medical health model is the anxiety is the problem. That's the dysfunction. So let's give you something to solve the dysfunction and mute the anxiety. So now we're just disconnecting people with medicine. As opposed to asking, well, maybe you should be anxious. Like, these are the conversations I have with people that have these anxiety disorders, and all these problems. Now, are there cases? I'll say it. Yes, there's cases that there is a but you're talking about less than like 2-3% of the population.
Right.
Not that. It's literally the proper response. You should be angry. As a matter of fact, I'd be furious if I were you.
Right.
This is what I say to people with suppressed anger from their past.
Right.
I would be so pissed. Do you think that 6-year-old was really pissed off when that happened to them and was blamed for everything?
Right.
And you're holding on to that anger for 40 years? And every time I say that, they're like, yeah, I'm really pissed. Like, it's just right there. It's like, yeah, I don't blame you. I'd be super pissed too. That wasn't fair. But then what we do as adults is we say, yeah, but I understand they did the best they could. It's like, yeah, that doesn't matter to the 6-year-old that went through that.
Right.
Who had never got to express that. This is all the trauma work that this is all Gabor Mate stuff.
Right. So, I mean, go ahead.
Anyway, I don't want to.
So, I mean, like, so I'm thinking now, right?
And Nick, let me just say this really quick too. Sorry. Because not only, just to tie it back to kind of our work, right? The physical stuff, like your knee, you have knee pain. Okay. The assumption, presupposition of the health and medical model is the knee is the problem.
The knee is the issue, right?
Exactly. So how do we eliminate or mitigate the pain in the dysfunction called the knee? Right. So we put all of our focus on the knee joint and we say, what's wrong with the knee? What's wrong with the knee? What's wrong with the knee? And anything we find that's wrong with the knee, we're going to fix it, whether it has anything to do why they're in pain or not. Right. And then if we look at the knee, there's nothing wrong with your knee, but my knee hurts. Yeah, I know. But if you can deal with it, here's some medication. Here's some anti-inflammatories. When it gets bad enough, come back and see me and we'll see if we can do surgery. Hey, do you want me to give you an injection? Maybe that can help with the pain.
Right.
And we'll inject your knee because I assume it's your knee. It's a knee problem because that's the dysfunction.
Right.
Vitality paradigm, totally different. your knee is what's happening in your knee. Your knee being in pain is the proper function.
Right.
Based on the current conditions. There's a reason why it's hurting. That's what it should be hurting. It's doing something it wasn't designed to do. It's trying to tell us that. So let's ask the bigger question. Why is this happening? What's causing your knee to be in pain? Assuming that your knee can just wake up today and say, you know what, I just want to make Nick's day miserable. And I'm just going to blow out on me. Like that's not how it works. Right. And so this is what I'm seeing across, over the last 25 years in the physical fitness, rehabilitative space, the mental, emotional space, and also in the nutritional space, which we don't need to go down that rabbit hole maybe today, but this is the difference in my mind between the health and medical paradigm and the vitality paradigm. There's completely different presuppositions, and the primary questions that are asked are totally different.
Right. So, and look, I want to take a leap here. I want to try and tie something together here that kind of is happening in my mind right now. Like most of what we just spoke about, whether it's the anger, the anxiety, the jealousy, whatever's showing up there, let's say it's the knee pain, the meniscus tear, whatever's showing up there, we're those kind of have that negative connotation, right? Based on the current reality. They have that connotation of like, those are the bad things, those are negative. But what's also occurring to me right now, Matt, is those are byproducts. Those are not the focal point. We have chosen to make them the focal point, but they're not the focal point. They're the byproduct.
Correct.
So if it is possible to have that in the negative space, is it possible to have that in the positive space? Should I be focusing on happiness? Should I be focusing on joy? You know what I'm saying?
Done, man. I like how you did that.
Right? So it's like, speak to it, right? Speak to it, like, because now, conversely, if it's possible down here, it's got to be possible up there.
You got it, man, and it's 100% right. It goes to what I believe, and again, at the end of the day, nobody really understands emotions,
right?
So no matter what anybody tells you, we don't know,
right?
They don't know. Science doesn't know. Okay. They don't. There's nobody that can tell you exactly what emotions do and how they function and why they do what they do. There's no science that has pinpointed that. So just to put that out there.
Yeah.
Right. The model that I have found to be the most effective and does line up with some of the research on dopamine and some of the neuroscience is that what motivates us to move forward, okay, and this is the whole dopaminergic system, okay, what dopamine's the motivation molecule. If you don't feel motivated to do anything, it's because there's no dopamine, your dopamine levels are low, okay, just to oversimplify it. Dopamine is the thing that gets you motivated to take action. And so what lights us up and gets us motivated to move forward isn't the idea of being happy.
Right.
What motivates us to move forward is a meaningful pursuit, something that's meaningful us to pursue. Dopamine is a pursuing molecule. It gets activated when we're pursuing something meaningful. When we're aligned with that meaningful aim, that meaningful pursuit, our emotions give us feedback that, yeah, we feel fulfilled, we feel good, we feel joyful because we're lined up with the meaning. As soon as we get off track and we're stepping out of alignment with what's important and meaningful to us, that's when some of these other feedback loops come in and say, hey, pay attention, man. You feel anxious, you feel overwhelmed, you feel whatever. It's like we're out of alignment with whatever is meaningful to us. Right. And when I say meaningful to us, there's your biological things that are meaningful to you. And then there's your more like it's Maslow's pyramid, right? Like your biological needs are going to be the thing that are most meaningful, like food, shelter, connection, love. You know what I mean? Like there's biological needs that are super, like those are things that are as meaningful as, well, it's important for me to, write this book. It's going to have a lot of meaning to me. Like that's one form of meaning, but there's also this intrinsic meaning that's built into our species. Like feeling accepted, feeling valued, like that's a meaningful thing. And so when those things are threatened, we have alarm systems that go off.
Right.
Right. And so I say meaning and the pursuit of meaning, moving towards things, there also are biological needs that need to be met, that when they're not met, that same alarm system is going off.
Right.
Right. And so it gets pretty intricate and complex. But yes, emotions are more communication systems that give us an idea of, I know I kind of call them as bumpers, right? They tell us like when we're aligned and when we're not, and when we should pay attention. The goal isn't to be happy. And this is the best example I can give you. If we gave everybody listening an opportunity to get on an IV drip, and this is my colleague Josh came up with this analogy. I thought it was great. And we just have this magical IV drip that you take this IV drip and you'll be happy. Right. And you don't have to get up, you don't have to move, you don't have to talk to anybody, you don't have to pursue anything. You will be happy.
Right.
Like just sit here, do nothing. You don't engage with anybody, but we're just going to make sure you're happy. Right. No one would do that, because that's not really the goal. And this is the other thing. Like people come to me, they're stressed out of their mind. Like, what do you want? What do you want, Matt? I ask them, what do you want? And they're like, Matt, I just want peace. I just want to just be at peace. And I'm like, I hear you. Right. And it's like, but at the end of the day, you can only sit in a hammock and chill for so long before it gets super boring.
Right. For sure.
Because that's not what we're seeking. We're seeking purpose. We're seeking something to strive towards. We're seeking a way to grow and evolve and learn. Now, that's not the case if you're in survival mode, and I get that. If you're drowning, like, metaphorically drowning right now, and I say, what's your vision? It's like, breathe. Like, it's to breathe. Like, screw you and your vision, right? And it's like, all right, well, so for somebody who's just trying to keep their head above water, it's like, that's as far as they can see. Right. They can only see to, I just want to get my head above water. But once they get above water, then they're like, as long as someone's there to guide them, it's like, all right, there's no more fires, which may feel weird. What do you want to create next? Well, then that's a whole nother can of worms, right? Because it's like, well, all I've known is trying to survive.
Right.
I don't know anything else, right? And so now I've come out of that experience of, like, you can think of it as just like tyranny of just being completely consumed with this pain of being in the stress state and staying alive. And then I'm plucked out of here, and there's no more stress, but I'm kind of out in the desert, so to speak. And I'm like, I don't know what to do right now.
Right.
That's anxiety producing in itself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, okay, now I have to figure out this whole new environment, and I have to create a new infrastructure on how to navigate this thing. And I've never been there before. So that's scary. And so what some people do is they go back into the,
it's easier to go back. Yeah.
Yeah. The devil you know versus the devil you don't. Right.
Right.
Or that stay with the devil I know than the savior I don't know. Right. I think that's the same. And so it's always navigating these things, right? So yeah, I think bottom line is, emotions are really communication systems, not destinations that we should be shooting for.
Right. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And I mean, oh, that's such a deep dive. But I've brought this up with you too, and I realize that I've heard things throughout time that have helped me gain clarity on an experience or whatever the case is. And I have taken that on, and I just try and work on it. I chew on it for a while, right? Like that piece of meat that you're just kind of chewing on. And like, sometimes I don't want to stop chewing on it because I feel like there's more there, but just to speak to A Man's Search for Meaning. And I remember I'm going through it, right? And by Viktor Frankl, and then it was in with the first few pages, and he's experiencing the Holocaust. He's a prisoner, and what he speaks about is just, you don't believe that it's possible that another human could do this to another human. But then he's talking about, if you're looking for happiness each day, and you're going to miss the target every single time. And I was just like, wait, what? Like, you'd think that everyone should be searching for happiness in that. Yeah. But it's so man, oh man.
Well, and it's so funny when you look at like how our Constitution was written, they said people have a right for the pursuit of happiness,
Oh,
not the right for happiness.
right, right. Yeah, no one's ever brought the Constitution up. Oh man, that's funny.
Right?
Oh man, right.
Or yeah, or the declaration. I don't know. I might be
Yeah,
getting the document wrong,
right,
but you get what I'm saying.
right.
Like
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
pursuit of happiness. It's not the right to happiness. So
Right,
there's a pursuit involved.
right, right. And it'll eventually be a byproduct.
Yeah,
Yeah. All right. Right on. How we doing on time? Are you good on time?
I'm
All
great.
right, I would say let's just spend a few more minutes here. One thing that was occurring to me as we're going through that specific part of essentially, like let's say the guidance system, you refer to it as bumpers, trying to help you kind of gauge where you are. Are you in alignment? Are you not? One thing that has come up in my life that this is a huge piece when I interact with my clients specifically, and I'm sure you have to address it as well, are the distractions that do show up. At least I call them distractions. I also have referred to them as energy leakages. I've referred to them as drains, but basically like the things that aren't serving you anymore. And especially as, or I shouldn't say anymore, if you're in a current reality, what are the things that aren't serving you that you're still doing, right? And I realized for me, you know this, I'm about to be 3 months alcohol free. And it's like, dude, and I remember when we were talking about it, and like you said to me, dude, you're gonna see like an acceleration now. Like you're already accelerating. And it's every day, man. Every day I'm like, I just feel turned. I legit feel like I have a battery, an engine, and it's just like woo, 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 like ready to go. And I'm like, where am I gonna go? Like, all right, so where are we gonna take this? Where are we gonna apply this? But so what I'd like to get into quickly is really like the distractions, the things that aren't serving you. How far do you go in if we don't want to overcorrect, or if we don't want to, you're seeing someone with the guidance system, right? The bumpers are going off. How much attention do you draw to all these things, or do you maybe start with one as like, hey, let's start here, create the awareness around this, and let's see where we can go or what we can transition to, as opposed to saying, well, you should probably take a look at your alcohol, you should probably take a look at how much TV you're watching, so on and so forth. Because right now, again, the reality is where we have access to distractions any which way, right? Whether it's the working out, whether it's the tennis, whatever. How far do you go in helping someone create an awareness before they're able to start managing those pieces by themselves, I guess?
Yeah, so I think before you can even get into that conversation with somebody about what serves you and what doesn't,
Right.
you have to identify the specific thing we're referring to when we say it serves you. It serves what part of you, what aim you have, because alcohol, drugs, all that stuff, they serve people.
Right. Right. Okay.
There is utility value in everything.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, meaning, let's say somebody who's an alcoholic or can't stop drinking or can't stop smoking, like they found a way to manage their pain.
Right.
So there's utility value in that. You follow me? Okay. And so I think it's so important because I think, the last thing somebody wants to hear when they're struggling and in pain and drinking too much, like they know if they could stop it, they would. They can't because they haven't figured out a way to navigate this pain.
Right.
And so I will never fault anybody for doing anything that helps them navigate their pain because that's all they're doing. Right? It's their way of navigating pain. And so to come back to that young lady that I was talking about, it's like, I had to discover how this habit that she was doing that wasn't aligned with this aim, what aim was it aligned with? Right. How was it serving her? Okay. And that was when we got into the discussion and she discovered, oh, it's serving me in the sense that I don't have to be alone. Right. So it's like, okay, but working out right now doesn't serve this aim. If you want to get out of this pain you're in physically,
right,
Like, we don't want to work out, but working out helps me solve this other problem, this
Right.
other thing. So working out is what I have figured out how to serve this goal called I don't want to be in pain when I'm by myself.
Interesting. Right.
You
Right.
see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So so that's where it's tricky. It's like berating her for, so to speak, like, what's wrong with you? Like, you said you want to get better. Like, what's wrong with you? Why can't you do this? It's
Right.
it's punitive. It's like, as opposed to understanding why they're doing that, right?
Yeah.
It's good old Stephen Covey, seek first to understand, then to be
Right.
understood, right?
Right.
And so it's like, all right, well, let's understand why you're having a hard time not exercising right now, even though you know it's causing pain.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's something bigger going on here. And my assumption always is it is serving you in some way.
Right.
Let's figure out how it's serving you. And if it's juxtaposed to this other thing that you say you want, then maybe there's another way to take care of this
Right.
that doesn't compromise that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
You with me?
Yeah.
And so I know that was a little kind of roundabout way to get to your answer, but it's really trying to understand. People don't do things because they're trying to sabotage themselves,
Right.
because they're trying to nobody's doing that.
Yeah.
Nobody's
Yeah.
consciously trying to create pain for themselves.
Right.
Right. And so if they're taking action that causes some pain, the pain that it's causing, they believe the pain that would be there if they didn't do it.
Right. Right.
It's always a negotiation. So yeah, somebody who's, family is falling apart because of a drug addiction or alcohol, and everything's coming to an end. The pain of that, as horrible as that pain is not as bad as the pain that they're able to mitigate by drinking.
Right.
And so until all of those things are deeply understood and not ridiculed and identified as bad and wrong, and you shouldn't do that, and that's bad, and it shouldn't do that. This is what's happening with this young lady who's using marijuana
Right.
to navigate her anxiety. And she's being told, just imagine this, a tyrant causing all of this fear. Like, literally, just imagine this example of a child in a room, and the parents are coming in and putting on scary masks, scaring them, and then coming out, and then like making lots of noise, then leaving, and like just wreaking havoc on this young person's system. And they're in this state of anxiety and fear all the time. And so they start sneaking pot in their room to just help them relax. And then the parents come in and say, it's the pot that's causing this. You got to stop with the pot. What's wrong with you? You should stop smoking pot. Like, are you freaking kidding me?
Right.
Like, the pot is the only thing that's keeping you above the line right now. And I said that to this young lady. I said, true or false, pot's like your best friend right now. She goes, it is. I go, I don't blame you.
Right.
I don't blame you. And I actually even said to her mom at one point, after this was actually a different client, but she kind of gave me a whole synopsis of what was happening with their child. And there was a lot of pressure and tension. I can just kind of like transformalize myself into this kid. And I was like, oh my God, this poor kid. And I said to the mom, you get a kick out of this, Nick. I don't know if I told you this. And she stops, and I go, I got to be honest with you. And one of the reasons why she was calling me is she wanted me to help her kid with his pot habit or whatever. Right. I go, I'm going to be honest with you. If I were to meet your son right now, I would blaze up a joint with him and say, here, dude, I understand why you're smoking.
Right. Right. Yeah.
I understand. Yeah. Totally get it. I think I would be too.
Yeah.
Right. And so we villainize these things that we call not serving them.
Right.
But is it really true?
No.
Maybe it is.
Yeah.
And maybe we need to understand it better before we vilify it.
Right. I think, honestly, yes. And I think that's a great place to kind of bring this to a close, man. Like that, I think that is bringing it full circle, starting with kind of like your introduction and discussing what it is that you do, what's driven you through this. And ultimately, when you boil it down to like the basis element, we're looking at a lens shift. We're looking at something in a different lens, because the lens that was working may have served that purpose, but maybe did not tie into the other pieces. And now we've created a population, a community reliant on that thing. So I think that's a great way to wrap up the session there, and just kind of like reiterating that even the way that I said it, I'm like thinking about the way that I said it in terms of like not serving this person or serving that, like it's probably going to be serving them to some extent. Like there's a reason it's there. And I think you said it great, recognizing that no one is actually trying to like go every day creating as much pain for themselves as they can.
No
There's
way.
a reason that these things are showing up. And that, like, I'll just say it straight up, like that almost has me feeling more compassion or more empathy towards some people that I know that are have been inside of really tough situations and continue to be, just recognizing like they're not choosing to just go every day and be like a-hole. Like there's things going on.
Yeah, I mean, minus the 3% of the population that are psychopathic, Machiavellian,
Right.
and
Yes. Yes.
narcissistic. Like
Yes.
there are those humans out there that I'm
Yes.
not talking about them, and unfortunately they're a little
Right.
bit more prominent. Like the psychological domain had to come up with these. It's actually 4 different personality types:
Right.
sadistic, Machiavellian, narcissistic, and psychopathic.
Right.
Like those are very specific personalities. So that's a different story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just to say that,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
people
Yeah.
that are have to deal with those types of individuals, like
That's good.
that's a tough thing, man. And there's
For
not
sure.
much you can do except get the hell out of there.
For sure. For sure. Okay. Well, that thanks for coming on, man. That dude, that was great. That was great. Thanks for coming on. I
I
really
appreciate it,
appreciate
man.
all the insight. Yeah. So, okay, real quick, if I don't know if you can boil it down to one statement. I just wanted it. Is there like, because
Yeah,
I've taken so much away from you over the years. If there's like one thing that you could leave with the audience, you could leave. Like someone's about to walk out of your office, and you got to choose one thing to say, regardless of their current dysfunction or experience.
Mhm.
What would be that one thing if you could leave?
Um, I think it's a framework or a paradigm that I would maybe try on. Okay. And it's assume that whatever's happening with you physically, emotionally, spiritually is happening on your behalf.
Mm.
And assume that it's trying to communicate something to you, um, and start to what it is this is trying to tell me that I may need to acknowledge and recognize. And I do think, to your point, Nick, writing things down is very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Journaling, I mean, I know that's a big part of my life. I know it's a big part of yours, but it's a place to self-reflect. So if you can
Right.
self-reflect and look through the lens of, hey, what's happening right now with my body, my mind, my emotions, let's assume it's happening because it's here to help me. What's it
Right.
trying to tell me?
Right.
What do I need to pay attention to? And then, find people in the world that, um, you're able to have conversations about this stuff that don't try to diagnose you with some problem.
Mm.
Um, you know, it's so much more. You're so much more than a diagnosis.
Right.
Let me just
Absolutely.
say that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. All right. There it is. Okay. Episode 5. All right. The body is on your side. Matt's paradigm shift from health to vitality. Okay. Here in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, Jupiter, Florida, ready to help you out, or ready to ask you questions that will help you help yourself out.
Well
But
said.
yeah, Matt, I appreciate the time, man. Thank you so much for joining. That was a great conversation. I definitely pulled some things away from that too. Every time I talk to you, I do. So we will wrap it up there, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, man.